Hi everyone, it's Nicki here. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about writing, editing books and everything else in between, which is what brings us to today's vlog, which is of course the next one in my new monthly series, Nicki's New Watches, in which I talk about what I've been watching at the cinema, on Netflix, on other TV and the like during the month. So let's kick us off. Film-wise, I actually only went to the cinema once this month, which is fairly unusual for me. There were a couple of things that I was interested in seeing, but I got really busy with some editing work earlier in the month, and they weren't ones that I was desperate about, so I decided to put work first, as you do, and didn't make it to a couple, but I will try to catch them in the future on streaming or DVD as appropriate. The one I did go to see was Tomb Raider. Now, I ought to say straight off the bat that I am a fan of the original Tomb Raider movies. Now that may be an unpopular statement. I know they're not perfect, there's plenty wrong with them, but I find them really enjoyable. I think they're great fun comedy action pieces. It probably helps that they have Chris Barrie in, and I've always been a bit in love with Chris Barrie, but I liked Angelina Jolie as Lara Croft. However, I am a big fan of Alicia Vikander as well, so I was really keen to see what she would do with the role. Obviously this is a much younger Lara, someone who's just starting out in her career as a Tomb Raider. Alicia is wonderful in it. She really portrays the character well. However, I just didn't like Lara as much in this alternate version. I kind of really like the sexy, sassy Angelina Jolie version. And that's nothing to do with Alicia's acting or the work she put into the film. It's just a personal preference that I like the character portrayed in that way a bit more. I mean, Alicia and Dominic West as her father were both brilliant, and there were some really good action sequences. However, for me, the film didn't have the heart of the two earlier films. There wasn't really much comedy, it was all played really seriously, and they also stepped away a bit from that sort of mythological fantasy aspect that was in the earlier films as well, which again is something I quite liked. So they went more for the realism this time. And it had some great moments and great scenes. Would I watch it again? Yes. Would I be as drawn to watching it as often again as I do the other two? Maybe not. I mean, overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was a good movie, but it just didn't completely capture me. So, moving on, I did watch a few films on TV, streaming and the like. So, first of all, I watched A Room with a View. Now, this is the old Merchant Ivory film. So it's one I've seen before, but I hadn't seen it in quite a few years, and so when I noticed it on SBS On Demand last night, in fact, I decided to re-watch it. It's always great fun. I mean, a superb cast of British actors and actresses. A lot of familiar faces: Judi Dench, Maggie Smith, Helena Bonham Carter, Daniel Day-Lewis, Rupert Graves. I could go on and on. It's really wonderful. I think it's a very good adaptation of the book, and one of the better adaptations of Ian Foster, and it's always just a very watchable piece. I also watched another one on SBS, in fact, Diary of a Teenage Girl. I was drawn to this one because Alexander Skarsgård is in it. He plays the boyfriend of this young teenage girl's mother, and then he and the teenage girl begin an affair. I really liked it. It was a little slow moving here and there, but I thought the portrayal of the main characters worked really well. It was well acted. It's kind of a coming of age piece in many ways, I think, and set in the 70s, so you really get that period vibe about it as well. So yeah, it's worth watching. It's not a film I'd absolutely rave about, but it was enjoyable and I would watch it a second time. So it's probably about a 3.5 stars as well for me. Then I watched one called Back in Business. Now this one I watched because Chris Barrie is in it. It's available to view online on Dailymotion, I think it's on. So it's from about 10 years ago, and it's a British comedy, and it revolves around Martin Kemp and Chris Barrie's characters. Martin Kemp is Lord Spencer and Chris Barrie is Tom Marks, and together they used to be a bit of a con artist duo, and they used to try to persuade foreign investors that they were buying, or they were selling them the Tower Bridge or other famous landmarks, they'd get their money and then of course it would all have been a scam. And they come back together after years apart because the space agency has just created this new sort of rover unit. All the other nations are after it, and so they decide to try to sell it to the highest bidder. Chaos ensues, everything goes wrong without giving it away, but it's the usual sort of idea of, you know, the criminals, and they're just a little bit hapless at times, but then they kind of get their act together, but then everything goes wrong again. There were things I liked about it. I mean, Chris Barrie was awesome in it, of course. Overall, it falls a little bit flat. It's probably only a 3-star film. There's plenty that doesn't work, and you kind of think they could have made a bit more of certain aspects of it. But in general, it was an enjoyable romp. It's probably not one you'd rewatch again and again and again, but just to see it once, it was good. Sticking with Chris Barrie, I also saw on Vimeo a short film that he did also around 10 years ago. It's just a little 15-minute one called The Optician, and this was really excellent. I loved this piece. He plays John, who's an optician, as the title suggests. John is in love with his assistant, but he's painfully shy, and whenever he's around her he can't speak and he can't tell her how he feels. But then one day he comes across a pair of glasses that have magical properties and allow him to see 10 seconds into the future. And thanks to the glasses, you know, there's a happy ending for all involved when the film reaches its conclusion. It's very sweet, very funny. As I said, it's on Vimeo, called The Optician, and it's definitely worth watching if you've got an odd 15 minutes to spare. And finally, on the film side of things, on Netflix I watched Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Lies, the 5th film in the franchise. I enjoy the Pirates of the Caribbean films. The first one obviously was the best, but all of them, they're still good adventure stories. You know, it doesn't matter that there's not a lot of substance to them in general, just if you want a pleasant way to pass the time and have a laugh, they're good. And this one's no exception. It's probably one of the weaker ones of the 5, I'd say, but it has its moments. Obviously the brilliant score helps. That dum da dum dum da dum 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 dum, brilliant piece of music, and it is awesome, and it's very evocative. It always fits the scenes well, particularly when there's a bit of sort of comical action going on. So I'm glad I saw it. It's, as I said, it's not my favourite in the series, but still glad to have watched it, and I had a good couple of hours having a giggle and a laugh at Jack's exploits. I mean, it is one of Johnny Depp's, I think, best roles. Jack Sparrow, it does suit him so brilliantly. So that brings us on to TV. To start, I think I'll just talk about the ones I've been watching on streaming, and then I'll come on to the ones I've been watching as rewatches on DVDs that I own. So, find my little thing here. So I've got my little TV shows to watch spreadsheety thing here, in which I can cross off the episodes as I watch them. So I watched the new series of Jessica Jones on Netflix. I quite enjoyed the first series of Jessica Jones. I didn't love it as much as the first series of Daredevil, but it was probably my second favourite of the Netflix series for Marvel so far. This series, I still liked it. And I didn't sit there bored. I was interested enough in the story and characters. However, I don't think this second series had quite the spark of the first one, and I think the problem was the lack of David Tennant, honestly. Now that may seem a bit biased because I am a David Tennant fan, however I thought as Kilgrave he really brought something to that first series. He was such a larger than life villain, and he worked really well against Jessica, and there just wasn't that great villain in the second series. All the stuff with her parentage and what happened to her, how she got her powers, it was interesting in a way, but it didn't have that real spark of interest that the Kilgrave storyline had. In fact, one of the moments I liked best was when David Tennant made a quick cameo appearance as Kilgrave, a figment of her imagination. But those little exchanges with them, that really sort of perked me up, and it was a shame that it didn't carry on longer, because I think that's what was missing from this series. So it was still good. Yes, I will carry on watching if they do a series 3, but for me series 1 was the best. I also watched on Netflix the Frankenstein Chronicles series 1, which they recently added. Sean Bean almost doesn't die without giving it away, but hey, nice that Sean gets a bit of a reprieve for a change. I really enjoyed this. I liked the way it drew on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but put a different twist on it with a bit of a sort of crime mystery story involved as well. The characters were interesting, the plot moved along at a nice pace, and definitely I would watch more of this series. Now then, everything else I watched this month, oh no, I lied, there's one more on SBS that I watched on TV or on demand when I missed an odd episode, and that was Knightfall. Now this is the sort of, I suppose you'd call it the new Vikings, because it's from the History Channel. After the success of Vikings, they've gone on to try to do a medieval one about the Knights Templar. It's not as good as Vikings. I mean, I think that we should say that straight off the bat. It doesn't have that immediate brilliance that Vikings had. But it's been enjoyable. I mean, I'm finishing the last episode off tonight, and I feel that it's the final episode. I feel like I can talk about it already. So, would I watch more? Yes. Would I be desperate to? You know, would I be upset if I missed more? No. It's kind of that middle of the road one for me. And really what saved it for me was Julian Ovenden as Donogare. I know that we're all meant to like Landry, he's the hero. He just didn't really do anything for me. He was okay, I didn't hate him, but I never really connected with the character on a deep level. Whereas Julian Ovenden, I mean, I like him as an actor anyway, and I like Donogare as a character. He is the villain of the piece in many ways, but he plays it so well that you really kind of can't help but root for him, even though you, at the same time, you don't want him to succeed. So yeah, it doesn't have the brilliance of Vikings. I doubt it will run for as many series, but it was still enjoyable, and if you're into sort of medieval period drama, it's worth watching. So that brings me on to all the rewatches that I have been doing for the year. And I have to say, for the month I should say, the majority of these have revolved around Chris Barrie, so I'll start with the one that didn't. And that was Blood Ties. I rewatched Blood Ties on DVD. For those who don't know, this is a vampire TV series that was based on the novels by Tanya Huff. And it's really enjoyable. I mean, Henry Fitzroy, our vampire character, he's a great character. He's instantly likeable. Vicky Nelson too, and their interaction together works really well. And I love the little sort of villain of the week kind of way they did the stories with a different supernatural threat each time, as well as having this ongoing, continuing story in the background to do with Astaroth and the demon who's trying to come through. So a really good series, shame it didn't get longer, and always fun to rewatch. So let's move on to Chris Barrie. It's the 30th anniversary of Red Dwarf this year, and that, plus a few other things, just thinking about the Brittas Empire, that made me suddenly want to rewatch those series. So the Brittas Empire, my husband had never seen, so we sat together and we've watched between us the full 7 series of Brittas Empire. If you don't know it, it's a British comedy from the 90s in which Chris Barrie plays Gordon Brittas, who is the hapless manager of a leisure centre. He's someone who means well, he's got the best of intentions, but he's no good with people. He doesn't read body language, he can't understand people's tone, and he rubs everyone up the wrong way, and everything becomes a catastrophe. What should be an easy little problem to solve in 2 seconds becomes this giant nightmare in which things explode and various other dramas happen. I've always loved it. I didn't watch from the very first series, I was a tiny bit too young, but I picked up a couple of series in when it was first shown on TV in England, and watched it ever since. And every now and again I feel the urge to rewatch the DVDs because it is a hilarious series. Even though I know the jokes now, it's always still funny. And I mean, Gordon, Chris's Gordon, I always was pretty attracted to as well. I think he's a wonderful character, and although there's lots of things about him you think are character flaws, he's so well meant, and everything he does is with the best of intentions, and you can't help but like him for it. I also rewatched Prince Among Men, the first series, because that's the only one I came across. It's on YouTube. It's not one I ever bought on DVD. There were only 2 series. This is a late 1990s series for Chris that he did after Brittas and Red Dwarf. And it's amusing in its way. Gary Prince is an ex-footballer who's turned entrepreneur, has a very high opinion of himself. And I think the reason this one didn't work as much as some of Chris's other roles is that Gary Prince is not a likeable character. There's nothing particularly redeeming about him, unlike Brittas and Rimmer. So it has its moments. It's got some amusing incidents, particularly with his obsession with the latest technological gadgets all the time that never work. But it's not a award-winning sort of series in my book. That brings us on to Red Dwarf. Now, as I said, it's the 30th anniversary, so I decided to rewatch it all. I'm up as far as season 10 at the moment. So during March, or late February into March, I did the season 1 to 10 rewatch. Season 5's always been my favourite, but I love episodes through all the series. It's always great to rewatch. It's, again, like Brittas, it's one of those shows that's still funny no matter how many times you see it. Chris is awesome in it. Rimmer's another character with whom I'm desperately in love. And I'm really excited because I haven't seen series 11 and 12 yet. They only came out in the last couple of years. But I have the DVDs on the way. They are hopefully arriving next week. So I should be able to talk about those in my next end of the month video for April. I'm really excited because these will be new episodes to me, whereas the others have been rewatching. These I haven't seen at all, so I'm so excited to see what they have in store. And finally, I rounded off the month by rewatching some of Chris's documentaries. Back in the late 2000s, he did a series of documentaries: Massive Machines, Massive Engines, Massive Speed, and Britain's Greatest Machines. Now, I'm not a technology science person per se, but I've always really enjoyed these, and I watched them, some of them when they were on TV before I moved over to Australia. Some of them I was watching now for the first time, having come across them on YouTube. And Chris is so enthusiastic about all the cars and the engines that he makes it interesting. He's a brilliant presenter for it because his like raw passion for the subject comes across so well. And so you do learn some stuff about the history of aircraft and various things as you go along. But I have to say I mostly watch for Chris, but I do pick up a few things along the way. So that was my watching for March. Heading into April, there are a number of films I'm hoping to see: Ready Player One, Death of Stalin, naturally Infinity War. And on Netflix, I'm hoping to catch up with the very final series of Vampire Diaries that they recently added. And of course, in a couple of days' time, we have the new series of a series of unfortunate incidents as well. And I loved Neil Patrick Harris in the first one, so I'll be watching that. So I should have a few things to share with you next time. Until then, I'll say goodbye, and I wish you all a great month ahead. Bye for now, everyone.